Hello guys, let me introduce myself. My name is Wismoyo Bimantara and I'm from English Literature 21. I'm here to explain about the British history of the Elizabeth era, and I guess let we start it. The first is Elizabeth literature, body of works written during the reign of Elizabeth I of England. Probably the most splendid age in the history of English literature, during which such a writer as Sir Philip Sidney, Edmund Spenser, Roger Ascham, Richard Hooker, Christopher Marlowe, and William Shakespeare found worship. The epithet Elizabeth is merely a chronicle reference and does not describe any special characteristic of wording. The Elizabeth age was flowering of poetry, the genre, the Spenserian stanza, dramatic blank verse, was a golden age of drama, especially for a plays of Shakespeare, and inspired a wide variety of splendid prose, from historical chronicles, version of holy scriptures, pamphlet, and literary criticism to the first English novel. From about the beginning of the 17th century, a sudden darkening of tone became noticeable in the most form of literary expression, especially in the drama, and the chance more or less coincided with the death of Elizabeth. English literature from 63 to 1625 is probably called Jacobean, after the new monarchs James I, but insofar as 16th century stems and pattern were carried over into the 17th century, the writing from earlier part of Reagan outlets is sometimes referred to by amalgam Jacobean. The Golden Age represents the apogee of the English Renaissance and saw the flowering of the poetry, music, and literature. The era is most famous for the theater, as William Shakespeare and many other composers played that broke free of England. But the style of theater, it was an age exploration and expansion abroad, while back at home, the Protestant Reformation became more acceptable to the people, most certainly after the Spanish Armada was repealed. It was also the period when England was spared realm before its royal union with Scotland. Elizabeth age contrasts sharply with the previous and following reign. It was a brief period of internal peace between the Wars of the Roses in the previous century, the English Reformation, and the religious battle between Protestant and Catholic prior to Elizabeth's reign, and then the later conflict of English Civil War and the ongoing political battles between Parliament and monarchy that influenced the remainder of 17th century. The Protestant or Catholic divide was settled for a time by the Elizabeth religious settlement, and Parliament was not yet strong enough to challenge royal absolutism. England was also well off compared to the other nations of Europe. The Italian Renaissance had come to an end following the end of Italian wars, which left the Italian peninsula improvised. The kingdom of France was embroiled in the French Wars of Religion at 1550-60 to until 1598. They were temporarily settled in 1568 by policy of tolerating Protestantism by the Edict of Nantes. In the part of this, but also because the English had been expelled from their last outposts on the continent by Spain's Tertius. The centuries long Anglo-French wars were legally suspended for more English resign. One great rival was Habsburg Spain, where the warm England clashed both on Europe and America in skirmishes that exploded in the Anglo-Spanish War of 1585 until 1604, and ended by Philip II of Spain to invade England, where the Spanish Armada in 1588 was famously defeated. In return, England launched an equally unsuccessful expedition to Spain with the Drake Norris expedition of 1589. Their further Spanish armada also failed in 5696, 1597, and 62. The war ended with the Treaty of London of the year following Elizabeth's death. England during the period has centralized aggresses, effective government legislation of reform of Henry V and Henry IX, as well as Elizabeth, harsh punishment for any dissenters. Economical, the century began to benefit greatly from the new era of transatlantic trade and representative Spanish-Portuguese treasure, most notably Horace Francis Drake circumnavigation. Okay, I guess I will jump to the Shakespeare's. Okay, when the Shakespeare began his working career, Queen Elizabeth I had been on the throne of nearly 30 years, and by the time of her death in 63, she had ruled over England and Ireland for 45 years. She was a popular monarch, and her long reign helped establish England as a major European commercial and political power. Elizabeth also supported the arts, which enabled pottery, music, and theater to flourish throughout the second half of 16th century. Elizabeth belonged to the Tudor monarchy, which her grandfather Henry had founded. The Tudors inherited the throne after Henry VII plunged England into decades of religious turmoil. Elizabeth's father Henry broke with the Catholic crowns and appointed himself the supreme head of new Protestant institution known as Crowns of England. Henry VII's breaks with Catholicism caused religion conflict throughout England and inspired the ire of Catholic kingdoms in Europe. England remained Protestant under Edward I, but when Mary I ascended the throne in 1553, she declared England Catholic once again. When Elizabeth became queen in 1558, she inherited the kingdom worked by persecution and bloodshed, and her first act as queen was restore Anglican crowns. Though from today's perspective, we often consider Elizabeth's reign a golden age of English history. At the time things were similar for last certain Elizabeth spent much of her time as monarch managing religious strife between Catholic and Protestant, and trying to satisfy the demands of radical Protestant sects like the Protestant. Such religion established rather a kingdom and made everyday life uncertain. Political threats also undermined the kingdom's sense of security. Elizabeth was a target of ancient plots like the Bimantara plot at 1586, which sought to replace Elizabeth with the Catholic cousin Mary, Queen of Scots. After Mary was executed in 1587 for conspiracy, Mary only King Philip II of Spain sought retribution by turning his armada against the English. Elizabeth's navy famously defeated Spanish armada in 1588, and though in hindsight in this victory helped establish England as an important naval power. At the time of the ongoing war with Spain caused much anxiety. Elizabeth's status as Virgin Queen also caused anxiety in the kingdom. Her refusal to marry meant that she would die without on her. And it was rumored that the King of Scotland, James VI, would instead of his claim to inherit the English throne wasn't acknowledged. Shakespeare never wrote about Elizabeth directly. Perhaps his most direct reference to the Queen herself appears in Midsummer Night's Dream, when the Oberon speaks a beautiful virgin of a festival torn by wets. Shakespeare's history plays also address the life of Elizabeth Tudor forebears. For instance, Richard III concludes with Henry Tudor, the earliest month, killing the king and assuming the throne as Henry VII. Shakespeare also dramatized the Regent Elizabeth's father, his final history play, Henry VIII, which examined the monarch's break with the Catholic crowns. Shakespeare also found subtle ways to reflect the national mood in the tragedies and comedies he wrote during the final years Elizabeth reigns. When Queen Elizabeth was declined, it reminded uncertain what would happen after her death. In Julius Caesar, written around 1599, Shakespeare described the outbreak of the bloody civil wars in the aftermath of beloved leader death. Hamlet with Shakespeare likely worth around 300. Dramatic power struggle raised the prince of neighbor kingdom invaded Denmark and taking throne for himself. Finally, in a measure of minder likely written in 63, the years Elizabeth death, Shakespeare imagined the city-state riddled with corporation and abyss because the ruler has relinquished responsibility for his people. Also of this place reflect real-world tension and excitation of Elizabeth England. Okay guys, that's all I can say. Hope you all understand and thank you for watching. Goodbye.